we ever wanted was everything. All we ever got was cold. Get up, eat jelly, sandwich bars and barbed wire. Squash every week into a day. Marilyn and Nico. Here's a piece of celestial history you may have never heard, or maybe you've heard it 1,000 times in terrible bits of cinema or pop culture literature. It doesn't matter. I'll give it to you again, but 1,000 times better, if only for the characters this version, the truest one, features. Some people weren't meant for this earth, a common enough platitude, or, in many cases, a passive-aggressive slur. Anyway. Some people weren't meant for this earth, but do you know why? Because all people begin life in heaven, as angels. Yes, all humans begin this way, in a sort of pre-life, in a place where time doesn't mean much, only days that end and nights that begin. But not all are selected to be reborn on earth. Not all could survive it. When you're born into heaven, naturally, you arrive fully formed. On earth, you must be in utero, and just when you're getting used to breathing underwater, you suffer the indignity of expulsion to air and dry land. Never mind the 70 or 80 years after that. No, not everyone could survive it, and so not everyone is sent. The selection isn't made based on any kind of goodness. God considers all of his creation very good, of course. But perhaps some have something extra to offer, some kind of aid or inspiration. These angels are sent to earth, while others are selected to remain angels and become proficient at that, each according to her talent. Marilyn Monroe and Nico, each christened something different on earth, but they were always thus in heaven, no matter what anybody tells you, were chosen, as you now know, to put their wings aside and fall into the grips of Mother Earth. But first, just to make sure they were up to it, they had a trial run at Mons, at that Great War battlefield. That story is true too, though it's doubtful the account you heard was correct. Anyway, if this seems a strange first mission, imagine how they felt. But they were pleasing to the eye, and indeed lent some much-needed encouragement to the French and British regiments who, against all odds, won the day. After this, Marilyn and Nico thought they'd certainly return to heaven. They both loved being angels and had been entrusted with this important operation after all. Surely this was a way for God to ascertain their angelic abilities. But it wasn't to be so. God did see their talents. God did see their strength and beauty and skill. God did love them. He also saw their influence on the soldiers, on the men, and felt this couldn't be wasted. Surely this would translate to some noble leadership. Surely this would lead to a spirit of unmitigated global goodness. And so a sacrifice was made. When an angel is reborn to earth, they are made to forget where they came from. They may have flashes of celestial memory, periods of unbidden and overwhelming joy that last but a few seconds and are then erased. But for the most part, they bump along like everyone else. Marilyn and Nico remembered. They remembered as babies. They remembered as children. They remembered as adults and superstars. Marilyn remembered as she was born to a mother depressed and deserted. Nico remembered as she fled Cologne as a toddler from a war that injured and deranged her father. Marilyn remembered as she moved from foster home to child bride. Nico remembered as she made her way through a Germany torn apart and onto a U.S. Army base. They remembered every time they were referred to as girls and women, these new things they were supposed to know how to be. They remembered when they were betrayed. They remembered when they were let down. In short, they remembered all the time. Confused and sad, They struggled to live up to expectations or defy them, all the while yearning for their homeland. At the pinnacle of fame, they did feel somewhat successful and fulfilled in their mission. Their art set people free. It provided a retreat, something beautiful and delicate. They even met again, briefly, in acting class. They couldn't let on they knew each other. However, these meetings did provide some comfort. But classes end, and love affairs end, and movies and songs and scenes end. And then all they wanted to do was go back. This wasn't on offer, however, so they turned to drugs and men and fame. But you can never go home again. You know that. God is not always happy to see you, as it turns out. He wasn't mad, but he was not cheerful. What have you done, my darlings? What has become of you, my beautiful children? We would be okay if we could just have our wings back, they said, ever hopeful. If we could just live as before, we would be all right. But God doesn't grant wishes. He took them, one under each arm, and led them to the very back of heaven with all the elderly angels, some fallen, some merely retired. And here they live out their days. Nico with her needle, Marilyn with her pills. They get on well with the others. Of course they do. There was nothing wrong with these two. Just a glitch in the system. Marilyn is sweet and docile, tending to the needs of the older angels, basking in the adulation of all. Nico is acerbic and amusing, looks diminished, happiness vastly increased. But heaven still has a kind of time, still has days that end and nights that begin. And at the end of these days, and the beginning of these nights, they look at each other and say, well, at least we have each other. And then they break down into hysterical laughter and fall silent.